Now I'm with you on this. So I'm now my track record on this issue is documented back to 1988. So I have never let white friends get away with use of the N word.
Yeah, I close
Uh,
well, I've never
yeah,
even I can't
I've
even say what I would do in that situation because 'cause I've never been in that situation. I
oh
was in
I've
that
been in it.
situation once, and I think I held it down.
Oh, I've ruined relationships, upset social settings. I've it's it's gone bad for me. I'm the one that's ostracized. I've had black friends tell me I'm the one that needs to
Right?
leave because I'm the one upsetting the
That's
apple cart with their white buddies using the N word. So I've yeah I
that's what
don't.
the black people got on me. I wanted to clothesline this dude. He called, I didn't know anybody personally. I was playing basketball in New York, and they was trying to tell me this Puerto Rican dude called me the N word, told me because I was ball hogging and taking shots I knew I couldn't make. And he was right to be pissed at me, but he was like, called me the N word, and I stepped to do. I called him the S word, and
Ooh.
all the black people attacked me. Yeah.
So I remember
But I can't
at
even
yeah.
listen to Fat Joe. I can't listen to Immortal Technique. I can't abide it.
I I've changed on this issue and I'm with you. I used to try to give that New York pass, that that what you would call like the Fat Joe pass. I don't do it
No.
anymore. But I will say this. I will say this. I do not upset the I don't turn over tables at family in-law gatherings. I talk about it after the fact with my children. We have conversations about it. But this is an issue
Yeah.
because and especially around in my experience where there's this enormous overlap of the black and brown community, of really the African diaspora and the brown community in my immediate experience, and everybody's on board with the use of the word, and I'm not cool with it. I'm
Yeah.
just not cool with it. And but I will admit that I don't when it comes to the family settings, I don't, because I admit I don't want the experience. I don't want to turn. I don't want to become. I don't want the family thing to have. I don't want to do with the family what has happened in social settings. And I. It's a contradiction. But I mean, because you were talking about
Yeah.
people who are like their spouses. Like you got their black spouses and mixed black Latino
I don't
kids,
play
and they
like that.
grow up in these
Listen.
Prince PG County hood areas and stuff like that. I just have chosen to. Now, is it true? Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing. Immortal Tech uses the N word.
That's
I think
all
he did.
he says. Go listen to
It's
Revolutionary
been a
Volume
minute.
1 or
It's been a
2.
minute. Yeah, I'm
That's
not.
all he
Yeah.
says. I can't listen to his shit. I was really I went and got that shit, and I'm like, "God damn." I had to go look into, and I'm like, "Word? Immortal Revolutionary Volume 2." That's all he says.
And
I
you know
don't
where?
even buy
And
that shit.
there was another time I didn't say anything either, and it was I was at my this is years ago. I was at my brother-in-law's soccer game, and it was all Latino and African diaspora players. I don't think there were any white folks even on the field, and the N word was just all over the place. And there was this one point where that I always remember this one part. There was a Latino who got mad at his black teammate. They're on the same team, but the black player made a mistake, and he was like, "Come on, get yourself together." And I just remember thinking, yeah, this is not. This don't work. You you but I didn't intervene. I never said anything. I never again part in part because of really primarily because, well, first of all, it was first of all it was at a game where the parents of each team ended up getting into an altercation, so it was like a lot of hostility. The ref, there was like beef with the ref. There was, so it would have definitely led to some sort of
Let me
physical
but
conflict.
here's the thing
And
that
I
we
just
know. Here's the thing about white folks and those who mimic and seek to emulate them. They'll start with ribbing and mild mockery,
mm,
insults, but their ultimate goal is your absolute dehumanization. So you just can't play like that. And it really saddens me that a lot of young black people think, oh, they're so far removed from the lynching tree. They're so far removed from the back of the bus. They think they've come so far and they're so advanced that they no longer have the shackles and the burdens of a long time ago. We're this the 2000s that they can spread. But here, let me tell you this one thing I've learned. I am a connoisseur of slurs.
Mm.
So I know the slurs for the Irish. I know
Oh
the
yeah.
slurs for the French. I know the slurs for the Scotch. I know the slurs for the Latin American Hispanic community and the particular Mexican
I was gonna
versus Puerto
say,
Rican
yeah,
versus
it's not all the same. They
Dominican
got
versus
specific. Yeah.
Venezuelan. So you come with my slurs, I'm gonna come back at you with your slurs. That's just my policy. If we doing a slur, let's have a fucking slur party. If you're gonna say a slur to me, then it's gonna be a slur party. That's my position. If you get to say slurs, I'ma say slurs, and let's all do the slur dance. That's my position. Now, it's been a while since I be putting hands on people and, like you said, flipping tables. But if you open the slur door, I'ma kick that shit all the way open, and Imma come with my slurs too. So let's all do slurs or nobody do slurs. But I ain't gonna be the one having my ancestors disrespected while your ancestors get to rest comfortably in their shallow graves. Fuck that shit. So if I don't know your particular heritage, I can just look you over and find something broad enough. So that's my position, and it
So
is
I know I hear
hey,
you,
well,
but
that
again, in
shuts
the
people the
context that
fuck
I'm
up.
talking about,
That shuts them up real quick.
in the context I'm talking about, for the most part, we're not talking about the use of the word in the hostile sense. Then
It's
it's in the
always
it's
there's no other way to
I
use it.
I know I understand what I but Diallo
If you're
but
not black, there's no other way to use it. But I'm sorry, go.
no, but Diallo, you do. But I understand you're right. But you do recognize that for a large segment of societies, there is this belief that the N word is can be affectionate, be. I'm not disagree. Please don't argue the point with me. I'm only asking you to, if you can at least acknowledge the reality that for some that is the case. That's all I'm saying.
I
And what I
disagree with that.
You disagree with the fact that there are people who use the word, who consciously to themselves at least argue that they're using it out of affection?
Non-black people, black people who don't have the history of slavery, segregation,
Again, I'm not.
discrimination, and black people who didn't have to go
All
through
right.
and don't go through that, they get that. They
I
get to
didn't
get on
say that.
that.
You're not. I'm trying to, again, this is where sometimes we have this issue with this nuance. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm asking you if you recognize that, yes, there are, particularly in communities like around here in PG County, Maryland, just as an example, where you have this enormous overlap of Black and Latin American communities, particularly, again, Diallo, I'm not, in the same way you do acknowledge that there, even among Black people, there is this idea that I'm using the N-word with you as a term of endearment, and that we
Yes,
have
amongst black
reclaimed the
people.
term.
I acknowledge that
But
amongst
do you
black people.
but do you also recognize that there are segments I've experienced, certainly in the New York area, certainly down here in the PG County area, where Black and brown communities are accepting of it among each other, given a shared experience and location and brotherhood or sisterhood that they feel with each other? I'm not agreeing with it. In fact, I've just said I don't agree with it, but I'm asking if you at least acknowledge that it's there. That's the only
I
the
I do not acknowledge that it's coming
okay.
from affection from non-black people, even
Do you
though
not? No.
non
Do you acknowledge that they claim that it's affectionate?
Oh,
As
yeah,
they.
they
That's
lie
all I'm
about every
saying.
yes, and I think they're
Okay.
lying. I acknowledge
Okay.
that they claim it, but I don't think that it's sincere, and I
Okay.
don't think that in their hearts and hearts, because they all come from extremely racist and anti-black cultures, and they don't challenge the racism. They want all, like this one sister poet, they all Bob and no Marley. When people want to engage with the fun parts of blackness, but don't want to engage with the struggle of blackness. So even
So
here in Chicago, on the West Side, We got people, people from various parts of Latin America that love Black culture, love Black food, love Black women, and when we have to take it to the streets, when atrocity is committed by the police or some other overt act of racial aggression, they not there for the struggle. You got these people who are there to dance to our music. They're there to dance to our music. They're there to eat our food. They're there to ape our culture and our style and to lay in our beds. But they not about to lock arms with us in sincere struggle, especially when the offense and the attack is coming from the core of their community. Latin America is racist as fuck. From the Dominican Republic lynching Haitians to the Mexican discrimination and the mockery in Mexican media, where they're still got the racist caricatures all over Mexican media and products. And if you go the further south, you go to the border, to harboring Nazis in South America. So no, I do not believe that these people are coming from the same place as we do, and that's a big problem we have. We're always projecting our sentiments on other people who don't hold our sentiments because they act in the same way we do. Fuck that shit.
But I'm
And
not.
here's one more thing. There's enough slurs and enough slurs in their culture. Come with your own slurs, because I've been around Mexican people and I've heard them talk about use slurs within their community. I've been around Jews where they're talking amongst themselves and they use slurs and stereotypes joking. I've been around the LGBTQ community where they use anti-gay slurs and talk. I've been around the sisters where they call each other words that if I said it, it would be sexist and misogynistic. Every isolated group, especially isolated groups that have been discriminated against and been attacked and been dehumanized, will often claim that word and use it in their own way. But when you come from outside and you go like, well, I like and I hang out with them and all my friends are these people, that does not give you. And what one thing I learned is when I do engage in disabled communities and amongst disabled people say shit and little reckless shit amongst other disabled people, that does not allow me as an outsider to come in. And the fact that you have that desire, the fact that you have a desire to want to use it and participate at a level you got no business participating. I don't fly with me. And like I said, you say slurs around me and you ain't black, you ain't of African descent, and you use the slur around me, I'm gonna use your slur, the slur against you. And like I said, I got a whole arsenal of slurs to throw at anybody that think they can be not black and use the N word.
So it's not that I disagree with any of that. I just don't think that you're hearing the point I'm
I
trying to make.
heard you, and I disagree with you. Why you act like just because somebody disagree with you, they don't hear you?
Because your whole argument is because you're arguing against a point I have not made. That's what makes me think that you're not listening, because nobody is everything that you just ranted is on the one hand accurate, but is not addressing the point I'm trying to make. So that's what I'm finding a little frustrating. But so maybe I just am not able. I don't have the ability to make the point clear enough.
Did you not
So
ask me for that other people can use the N word from a point of affection or from the same cultural context as black people use it?
I didn't. I first of all, what I was asking you was all I was asking you. What I thought was the very simple yes. I thought I was going to get just a simple yes. I maybe that's another point of naivete on my part, because it wasn't. Do you agree? It wasn't inviting the soliloquy that you just offered, which is as accurate as it is, does not address the point I'm raising. It was to ask you initially, do you even acknowledge, are you even aware, can you even acknowledge the existence of communities where what you're saying doesn't actually apply? Because what you're saying doesn't actually apply to the description of the setting I was trying to share. So for instance, if you have and also I was acknowledging my own inability to address certain issues in certain settings in ways that are not going to be harmful or explosive. So I was thinking again. I'm thinking of communities where black and brown people have grown up together. They are intermingling in terms of family, in terms of social and lived experience. And we're talking about in the most immediate experience, I'm thinking of younger people who have grown up in a context where if they didn't use that language, they would be seen as outsiders or inconsistent with what's happening in their community. Because their black friends use the word and encourage that they do as well. Their experiences are so intertwined and overlapped that the distinctions that you're accurately drawing out in the history are not known to them. They're not even experienced by them. They are not generationally growing up in the same way as their parents and grandparents. So the racism that you're accurately describing that exists in Latin America isn't transferring to some of these younger generations in the same way. In this case, in these specific instances that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the Mexicans that call black people this, that, and the third. I'm talking about specifically in New York City area, or down here in the Prince George's County area. I'm talking about particularly younger generations of Latinos who are growing up, again, very much intertwined with the local black community and following suit with what they are being encouraged to believe is the normal course of socialization and growth and interaction. So I'm saying to you, I don't agree with it. I'm also just acknowledging that I don't know exactly what to do about it. And I don't think your approach in the settings I'm talking about is realistic. It would lead to massive violence, destruction of families.
Wow.
And an inability for the message to be heard. So again, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm sharing an honest, contradictory space that I'm experiencing, and admitting I'm not. I don't have the level of clarity that you have, because you don't. You have the in this case luxury of a single lane without the overlaps, without the contradictions. And in some ways I'm even envious of it. But I think that it eases the conclusions that you reach, which are not wrong, but I think also does not acknowledge that other people are living the simple ease.
Wow.
And but go ahead. You listened long enough. You did as well as you could to let me lay it out as best I
I
could.
have to tell you, I'm sorry to bust your bubble, but
Oh
I don't
boy.
care how deep in the ghetto, in the inner city housing project, how steeped someone is in black culture, how many buckets of chitlins they have digested, or whatever other form of manifestation of blackness you want to imagine. Non-black people in those settings always realize I may be poor, I may be in the inner city, I may speak broken English, but I'm not a nigga. They know. I'm telling you, they never or
I'm not
ever absent.
disputing that though.
You just created a scenario. You just created a scenario where a non-black person could be so intertangled. And I've been in the South Bronx. I've been in East New York, Bushwick. I've been to the west side of Chicago and the west side of Kansas City. I've been in all these communities all over. I've been in Vallejo, East LA. I've been and engaged in all these communities where black people are mixed with other groups and have common history, common culture, common experiences with other groups. But every other group that
I
find themselves,
agree.
because there was a time when black people were in the slums.
But what did you do
with,
in those moments, Diallo? What did you do? Was your
I,
family engaged with that? And in those moments, when
yes,
you're in those
yes,
cookouts and your family's
Lord,
there, you blew up the party,
yes.
you interrupted and had this
Oh
discussion with those
hell yeah! Oh
people? I
yes,
don't believe that.
yes.
I just flat out don't believe it.
I
And I don't
who you
believe it
want? You
went
want me to
well,
get
and
my uncles on here?
I don't believe you've
You want me to
maintained a
bring?
family after the
Listen,
fact.
let me
Yes,
tell you
bring them.
something.
I do.
I
I do. I don't
have,
believe you. I
I
flat out don't
have,
believe it.
I have Mexican and white relatives. I know. Uh, uh, um, when I
There's
was
zero
got
chance you were in the settings
let
that I'm talking about and did what you're claiming. I don't believe
Oh,
it. I
yeah, I
flat out
did,
tell I
right in
don't believe
Brooklyn, New
you.
York City. Yes, I did, with the Puerto Rican community, and they learned, "Hey, this guy's weird. This guy's a little off."
It's
And
not the
like I
setting I'm
said,
talking about. It wasn't.
but
I'm not talking about
wherever this place
some
is, I
disentangled
promise you,
situation that you're in. First of all, I don't
Eric,
believe that, but I definitely don't
whatever
believe
this
you did
place
it where
is,
there's
because if
families
that was true,
overlapping.
all you got to go do the test. You go to this mixed and melded and meshed multiracial community where everybody has a black identity to the point
I
where they
am,
can use the N
Marlene.
word, and you go to that community and use the S word or any other word that these
That's not
people who are so
obviously. That's not
intertwined
to
with
say.
black
I get
people.
it, but that's not what I'm saying. You're missing my point, Diallo.
I'm not missing your point. I just simply
This is where
disagree
we
with
always
you.
have our issue. No, you're not, because you're not disagreeing with the point I'm making. You're hearing me say that it's okay for Latinos to use the
I
N
didn't say
word.
that you said
And
that.
you're saying
Nope,
you just
I
no,
don't.
but
I
that's
didn't
what
say. Nope.
but Diallo, that's the argument you're responding to. You're not responding to
I'm
the
responding to the
you're
fallacy that you articulated, that there can be populations of people with black people, that there are some places in this country where people of so-called Latin or Hispanic heritage are so intertwined with black people, live so closely intertwined, intermarried, intercultured with black people. And that the black people even encourage them, and that they need to use
but
the
it
N
does.
word
I'm watching.
to be able to navigate these
But I
spaces
live it
and
every
to,
day. I see it every day. What are you talking about? That's the point
and
I'm
I'm
getting at.
telling you that those non-black people that you described understand that they ain't black, and
Yes, I'm
understand
not
that when
disagreeing with you.
that they can use the N word, and that they are not themselves N words.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not
So that
disagreeing with you. That
means
again, that's why
that
I'm saying you're
black
not
people
arguing against my
for our
point. You're
own
arguing a point I'm not
dignity
making.
and racial esteem should shut that shit down.
Yes, I hear you're saying they should shut it down. What I'm not hearing you say is an acknowledgement. What I'm not hearing you acknowledge is the unreality of what you're describing. Because you're not because what you're describing, and I do not believe you've been in a setting that I'm talking about and done what
Oh,
you're claiming
I
to have
have.
done.
Oh, yes, I have.
And it certainly hasn't
And
been
I'll do it
recent.
again.
And if you well, I almost it's so tempting, but I don't I just don't think you've taken enough time or taken a moment to actually hear the situation I'm describing and to think outside of your own immediate experience, even to consider objectively the condition other people might be in, even as I'm agreeing with you that your analysis is correct. You're oversimplifying and I think misrepresenting situations you've been in and definitely not understanding the situation I'm describing.
Can I ask you a
Uh,
question?
sure.
Is there a situation where black people get so enmeshed in a community, so intertwined, where black people are allowed to freely use slurs and charged language of another group with impunity and even be encouraged? Let's say you have there are black Hasidic Jews, right? And when I was at Brooklyn College, which was a predominantly Jewish school, I would hear the Jewish students use all type of anti-Semitic slurs amongst each other. So can you give me an example? Because you and I both have dozens of examples where these Asians, Latino, and even white people feel comfortable enough being in the fantasy scenario that you described, that hey, I have to use the N word. I can't just function in this environment and culture without using the N word. Give me an instance where you know of any black community or individual that goes amongst another community and freely spit their slurs because they're so enmeshed and so intertwined with that community that they could just use charge or offensive language
I've never
against another
argued this
group.
point. This your question right here proves that I'm right in saying you're not arguing the point I'm making.
I
What you're saying is right, but you're
whew,
not arguing the point that I'm making. So of course, I've never been in a situation that you're describing, but of course,
'cause
we've
it
never
doesn't
been in it.
exist.
Exactly, because no other community has suffered what black people in this country have suffered, and no other community has had their relationship to this country's public opinion
So
and pop
logic
culture
would
to be the
suggest.
same. So what I'm so but at the same time, no other community has been raised and encouraged to emerge in the way other communities are vis-a-vis black communities to adopt a distorted blackness that has been projected by non-black people into popular culture that has been reimposed back on black people for them to accept their own an own bastardized version of themselves handed them by someone else while claiming to have redefined and reappropriated some of that language. So none of that. So of course there's not going to be that situation, but that's not what I'm arguing. I have been in the spaces. I've done so. This is why I'm trying to say about the nuance. I've done all of this. I started off jokingly,
Nuance.
but I've been saying for again for decades I have ruined relationships over this. I do not let white people use the N word. I do not let people get away. I do not let I've been in spaces where I broke up a party because a white boy called his Latino friend the S word, and I was like, "You gonna let him do that?" And it ruined the whole evening. So I don't have a problem with that. What I'm trying to explain, though, is in the situation particularly that I find myself in now, where I'm looking at again communities that have raised up differently that are in relationships with each other in these specific settings where they have been through all these massive distortions encouraged and welcomed by their black peers and invited. My daughters talk about this on a regular. I'm not even aware. They talk about all the ongoing conversations in their school right now about all of the details that their peers use about who gets to use the N word. How black do you get to, how many black grandparents do you have to have before you're allowed to use the N word? Can African diaspora folks who just got here within the last few generations, do they get to use? They're all over the place. What I'm simply trying to say is that in certain settings, I'm not able without. I'm just admitting that in certain settings specifically related to family. So again, Diallo, I'm not denying that you're accurate in your assessment. I'm not even denying that the only thing I'm denying is that you would do in the settings I'm describing what you said you've done. Because in those settings where it is family, where it is friends, where it is more complicated than you're describing, and where you and your children and you're in again, well, all right, I'll just stop there. That's fine. I can't do any better than this.
Listen,
I know for you it's not complex, and that's the beauty, and that's the luxury of the world you live in, Diallo. Everything is just so easy.
Yeah, it ain't easy, but I mean, goddamn it, there's
You
some
just said
things
it's
I
easy.
don't
It's not
struggle with shit.
complex.
I got enough shit that I have to struggle with that I'm not about to struggle with shit that is easy. I'm gonna go ahead and
I
take
just
the
don't believe
freebie.
that if you, I just
To
think for
me,
you, you're
if
not in
there's
these
an exam
spaces. You
in
have the
life,
luxury of not having to be
non-black
challenged.
people saying the N-word, that's like getting credit for putting your name and the accurate date on the exam paper in the exam of life.
Again, you're not
That's a
arguing my.
no-go. That's
I
a
agree.
non-starter. And
Okay.
like I said, where you described that black people have a unique history of any other ethnic or racially distinct group in this, black people have a very unique history. Therefore, my conclusion is we should police that shit harder than any other group. And like I said, even amongst whites, in Missouri back in the 70s, they set up the inner city projects right across from the trailer parks. There'd be like a creek and a landfill, and the dirty little white kids would play with the poor little black kids. And I'd hear them white folks using every racial slur against anti-white slur from honky, peckerwood, redneck. They would use all that shit. And I'd hear it on a daily basis. I was in New York City. And like I said, I was around predominantly Jewish groups, and they would use every stereotype, penny pinching, Shylock. They use every anti-Jewish slur amongst themselves. I would hear like I said, I've been collecting slurs. I didn't know Irish versus Italians. You wop, you mix. I've been hearing that shit go across every other group. And the only group that allows people to bleed over. But I just absolutely disagree with you that someone could be not black in America and simply being enmeshed, merged, mixed, and around black people so deeply that they just have no choice. Because I know in my life, black people I've been around all my life that don't use the N word. And if it's a black person of African descent, a descendant of slavery,
What you just said is not my
foundational
argument.
black,
But
I
what you just
no,
said misrepresents my argument. I didn't
then I'm
say
at an absolute loss because you keep talking about these people who came up in an environment where the black people was like, say nigga, choking them, forcing them. Like you, there are people
that's
who
not
are
how I
so
described it. You're
so
misrepresenting my
oblivious,
argument.
so enmeshed in black culture
You're
that they just
misrepresenting my
use the
argument.
N word and don't even know it's wrong, don't even see it that way.
That is true. They are you that
And
that
that's
part is
not
true.
true. That's not a
But
person in the United States of America that don't know about the racial hierarchy and is not aware where they stand in that racial hierarchy.
you're
And if they say they don't, they lying to you, Jared. Oh, I just say nigga. I don't know. I'm sorry. I just thought I was a nigga. Sometimes I feel a little
again,
nigga myself.
I'm not saying that they're not lying. What I'm saying is what I'm trying to say is you're not acknowledging a whole new wave of generations who are raised in outside of your context. And I'm not saying that they're right. I'm saying you're not
I
acknowledging it,
acknowledge
and
that. I acknowledge that. I absolutely
and when
acknowledge
you
that.
describe the point that I'm making that you're disagreeing with, you're misrepresenting what I'm saying. And just like your boy in the chat, everything is
And them
politics. You're
children haven't been
misrepresenting
raised
what I'm saying
or
and
white.
not hearing, and
Yeah, because it's
you're
just
arguing
there's
a
a
logical
lost in
point, but it's
translation.
not the argument that I'm making. You're not hearing my point, and I wish at these in these
Well,
moments that I could
Coco,
get you to hear what I'm saying.
listen, I have a homie who moved upstate where his son was one of only 2 black kids in the whole school, and that school was saturated with the N word, and his son was only 2 of black students in the whole goddamn school, and this is a child today, and he said that all the Latino and Asian kids, not, Vietnamese kids were all using the N word freely. And he shut that whole shit down where they had to have an assembly and the administrator and the school board. He shut that shit down for a large, large school district, like, but the black child that was there before him was just swimming in a sea of N words, and he was the only black person there. And this other child came. My own children have confronted this, even though I've done everything in my power to make sure my children dwell in predominantly black spaces, from school to activities. My own children have confronted this, and my sons shut that shit down. And my sons have friends from all walks of life. My friends have, where I have to, you know, they, them, I have to learn pronouns and I have to learn shit I never thought I had to
Your
learn
children had
growing
to
up from my
intervene,
own
but your
children.
children
And my
had to
children
intervene,
have intervened.
meaning that
My
those other
children.
children are being raised in a certain setting that required your children to intervene. So that's all I'm
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I agree
But
with that.
that intervention is not occurring in the
But I
context of
don't
overlapping
suggest that
families,
they're
right?
doing it.
Right?
I don't
Right?
but you use
It's
the
not an
word
overlapping
affectionate
families and they're having to intervene. That's exactly my point. That's
and
exactly my
and
point.
and if there's anybody in my family, I've got Mexicans in my family, I got white folks who have married into my family. And if anybody in my family, any of my relatives are playing that game, they make sure I ain't around. They can do it at church because they know I don't go to church. But when I show up, when I come to town, when I get off the fucking KCI airport and take the shuttle downtown to Kansas City, shut that shit down for the time I'm there. Because I don't play like that. And I think that anyone who is not black using the N word, I think number one, they know goddamn well they are not black. And even those people who are emerged and submerged in blackness, or those ethnic groups who are associated with black people, they tend to go the hardest in show to demonstrate the dominant society that, hey, I'm not these people. The Vietnamese who would run little stores all across, and we walk in and we think it's so funny that they're using black jive as they exploit and take resources out of our community. We are too what they call it, xenophilic. We are a xenophilic people. No passes, no excuses. And if I gotta be the last nigga on earth to hold that line, then so be it. And I don't think it's unrealistic. And I teach my children. I have friends and allies who have taught their children. And I don't care if it's the year 2100. Well, if one person's racial slur will be articulated, everybody's racial slur is coming out.
I don't disagree with you. I just, again, you're not arguing the point I'm making, and you haven't even acknowledged the point I'm making in the context I'm describing. So,
I did acknowledge it, and I told you
hey,
that it's
then send me
wrong.
the email. Everything is hold on, Diallo, real quick. Everything is politics. All serious. You have really crossed the line in your discussion to me this morning. So if you want to send me an email and set up this visit, please do. Otherwise, be quiet or get banned or apologize. But you're not going to sit up here anonymously talking trash about me in the way that you've been talking trash. A, you've been incorrect, and B, you've crossed the line. I don't accept that around here. It's not happening. So it's up to you how you want to proceed. But no, not for calling me biracial. You're arguing that I'm in some sort of level of denial, and you've been hostile in your discussion of my identity. So for you, what you're doing is, so let me just step back. In fact, what you're doing is you're extending the mistake Diallo's making this morning to make it personal and not listen to what I'm actually arguing and arguing what I'm actually saying. That's so this issue of me being in some sort of denial is absurd given literally anyway, whatever. But
I've
as I
acknowledged
said,
every position you've taken.
no, you
Jared.
haven't.
You said there are some non-black people so enmeshed and so fused, merged, and mixed with black people and so steeped in blackness and black culture. You acknowledge that there can be some non-black folks.
I didn't say that. No. I didn't say that. See, that's the point right there, Diallo. That's the mistake. I did not say that because of their experience, they're allowed to do it.
No.
You just did it. Wait. You just said that I said they can do it. Hold on, Diallo. Stop for a second. Stop. What you just said was that I said that they can do it. I never said that. What I said was, from their perspective, they do it based on what their experiences have been and what their experiences have told them is acceptable for them.
And
I'm acknowledging what is, not that I agree with it.
No. I said it's wrong.
I didn't say that. But I didn't say it was right. That's why I'm saying you're not arguing. You're not disagreeing with me.
It's unacceptable.
Diallo, stop for a second. I didn't say it was. I didn't say it was acceptable. That's my point. You are misrepresenting my argument, and I really wish you would stop doing that and show me some.
What is the point of it?
Okay.
Why lay out that this phenomenon happens if you're not going to make a conclusion about the phenomenon?
What I did you're not listening. Again, you keep showing how little you're listening to what I'm saying because you want to make an argument that you are right about, but that is not appropriate to what I'm saying. So I'll try again. What I was saying and I'm still.
Okay.
What I am still saying is that I do not agree that it should be done, that the N-word is acceptable for anyone. But it has become in the mind's eye of some based on the way that they are growing up. And what I was acknowledging was that in certain settings regarding family and intense, close personal ties, I have not found the way that I can address it without it creating levels of drama and trauma that I'm not personally prepared to deal with. In my specific setting that you haven't addressed and acknowledged even exists, much less attempted to understand. So I am not saying that it is okay, regardless of the experience, for anyone to use that word. I am not saying that those who use it are. I don't believe that, particularly certain generations, that they are consciously aware of the racial history or their distance from the slur. Nonetheless, I don't agree that they are using it. I'm just acknowledging and trying to objectively understand that something, to the best that I can, that something is happening and recognizing the limitations, my own personal limitations, in addressing some certain instances of it. I've never defended it. I've never accepted it. In fact, quite the opposite. And I even began by laying out and making the point that because of so many previous experiences of the table turning and the ruining of this and that I don't want. I'm admitting I don't want to risk that in these certain settings where I'm dealing with in-laws, family, etc. And I have not found a way, other than maybe here or there some side conversations, and certainly with my own children, about what I have not found a way to impart to the broader extended family all that they would need to understand to and appreciate to make certain changes. That's what I've been saying. But to sit here and suggest that I have condoned this, or that I find it acceptable, or that I agree with it, is to completely misrepresent the point that I'm making.
I have to say this, which is very curious to me, and I'd like you to address it. You are suggesting that to confront a non-black person that has some type of connection or ties, to confront that person where you said it could be trauma, it could cause disruption. And it's funny to me that the non-black person using the N-word isn't the source of the trauma and disruption.
I
You
agree.
confronting and challenging the person using the N-word is the
Yeah,
source of control. That is
I agree.
mental. And I think, and I would encourage you and you to encourage others that the trauma starts when they first use the word. The disruption starts when they use the word. So when I smack the shit out you verbally for using the word, that is not the source of the disruption. That is a response. That is an ability to bring back order, peace, and balance. Because that, yes, that does cause me to short circuit. When someone says, well, a non black person saying nigga, and if I say, the fuck, have you lost your fucking mind? Then when I ask them if they've lost their fucking mind, then I've created trauma. That, no, the trauma started. I'm responding to the trauma and trying to correct and confront and cure the trauma. And yes, I know there are all kind of people who make all kinds of rationale and justifications for non-black people using this word. And I don't care about your background. I grew up in white America. I grew up in the heart of America, the Midwest. And even though these people or have us under genocidal oppression. When I am amongst the poor and working class white folks, I do not go around using anti white slurs, even though I grew up around and saturated in all my favorite heroes. My He Man doll had blonde hair and blue eyes. I played with white and Superman, white heroes all my life. And I'm so steeped in white culture. I don't care. I don't believe that there's anybody in the United States. I don't believe that there's anyone, and I think the research supports me, that is number one, not aware of the racial hierarchy, and number two, not aware of their position within the racial hierarchy. And that goes to children as young as 2 and 3 years old. When they ask little children at preschool and put up a picture of a white man and a picture of a black man and say, which man will rob you? If you're in trouble, which man will help you? So no, I don't believe that you can grow up in the Bronx, in East New York, in East LA, in Vallejo, California, in Houston, in any part of America within the territory defined as the United States or even planet Earth, if I'm going, that you can be use that word. And so the argument that there are some people so steep that they aren't aware of what they're doing, I don't accept that. The argument that
I didn't
we
say I
should not,
accepted it. You keep man, you and some
I do
folks in the
not
chat
accept,
wildly misrepresent what I'm
I
saying
do
and just
not
really
accept the
disrespectful.
fact that
And
a
some of you
black
in the
person,
chat, if you can't even respect me enough to put your name on some of the shit you're saying, then what are you even doing here? I'm about to start banning all of these motherfuckers, man. Fuck some of you motherfuckers, man. And Diallo is, and forgive me for that language, but I have to say that it's frustrating to me that your intent to argue a point that I'm not making is inhibiting our ability to elevate this conversation. It's
finally, I
frustrating.
would have to say that if our people, if our people, I think disrupting and creating tension in a setting, whatever that setting may be, to confront a non-black person using the N-word, I think that it should be done because they're not going to stop there. They never stop there. And I know every single down ass Back in my day, 40-ounce drinking, 40 and a blunt, non-black person that was so steeped in the culture that they didn't even the lines blurred between who they are and who the black people are. They really quick to drop the E. I know several hip hop grimy cats from the 90s that are now suburban white Republicans.
See, this is what I'm
It's just
saying
like
here.
and
Excel
and so no,
Escalante.
I don't
Hold
buy.
up, Excel. This is what I'm saying. This is exactly what Diallo's misrepresentation of my argument has led to into the chat. I never said anything about what I'm comfortable with or what you all have totally, of course. Excel, this is what I'm gonna say to you. You want me to answer that question? Send me an email with your actual identity. And then we'll have a conversation about it, because that's just a false representation of what I've been saying here. And if you can point to a timestamp or a quote where I've said anything that would suggest that comment or that question is legit, send that as well. And I'm waiting for that email from Everything's is Politics too. I don't see it yet.
And
But
listen,
this is ridiculous.
if
Some of
having a
y'all are
zero
crazy,
tolerance,
man.
having zero tolerance for anybody that's not black using the N word and having extremely limited, if that makes me limited, then so be it. So blood clot be it. I just don't accept. I just do not accept the argument that there can be a population of non-black people using the N word for whatever reason, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background is. And we never, like you said, you acknowledge, we never see the reverse of that. I never seen a black person walking around comfortably using honky
CD, I've
amongst a
explained
bunch of
this is
white folks
personal to
because he
me.
grew up in an all-white environment.
But CD, this is CD. I don't know what your real name is or who you are, but if you've been paying attention, this is personal to me. So I don't have a problem with being emotional, and I'm emotional. I'm emotional because my arguments being misrepresented, my characters being demeaned, people anonymously are taking shots in the chat and still haven't sent emails suggesting who they really are. So yeah, I'm irritated, and I have no problem being irritated. And if you come into these public spaces and behave in good faith as I do and get treated this way, and you don't get emotional or irritated, if you don't have family and if you're not connected to these politics in any meaningful, real way, and don't get emotional when this stuff comes up, then what you doing here? Then there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. So yeah, you damn right, and you damn right. I got an issue with all of this stuff, and in all of this, and I don't believe that it's that the setting and the context that I've been doing the best I could to describe this morning is being properly taken into consideration by Diallo or anybody else.
Maybe if you
At
gave
least
us some
Diallo's up here on
specifics,
camera with his real name.
give us some specifics. Where are these
I
individuals?
gave you
Where?
specifics. I gave you specifics.
Where?
I told you. First of all, I gave you you know full well the New York City region has its own specific history, and I told
Yes,
you the PG County area down here in Maryland has its own particular PG
yes,
Montgomery County has its own particular Latin African diaspora overlap, and there's certain class conditions and social conditions in which they all emerge, and in some cases with families and others there's tremendous overlap. So
yeah,
there's Latinos married to black people with their quote unquote mixed kids where the N word is used all over the place. And all I'm suggesting is that in some settings, trying to address that is not going to go well. It's not that I disagree with you. It's not that I don't think that certain interventions are right. And I don't think it's fair that as I sit here and humbly acknowledge some of my own insecurities or shortcomings or even failures that should mean a distortion of who I am or what my argument is. That's the problem with some of this stuff, and one of the reasons why these YouTube spaces are so wrought with disingenuous conversation, because as soon as somebody says something that is halfway self-deprecating, you got anonymous people in the chat running their goddamn mouths saying things they know they fully wouldn't say to somebody when they're in their face, even somebody 52 years old and half broken. And yeah, so you damn right I get emotional. This stuff, like I have fun here, but this stuff means something to me. I'm not out here just to play games, and this stuff is something that I do live and experience on a daily basis. So so what I am saying though is that again, Diallo, in these certain settings, I do acknowledge why someone or how someone could be raised in a Spanish speaking Latin American community that has these overlaps where they are encouraged from a very early age in all of their settings and media to use the N word. And then they are invited by other members of the Black community and even in their family to use it. And I am aware that when trying to intervene in that process, that there are risks and damages, social damage that could occur. Now, I agree with you that it is the menticide and it does have to be addressed. And I'm just also acknowledging the reality that myself and many others are not always going to be able to do it the right way and be able to flip the tables over. Now, I've said specifically, and this is why some of the comments in the chat are disingenuous, and I'm waiting for these emails. I've also been very clear about the context I'm setting of this Black and brown overlap. So this idea that whites who marry into these communities should be afforded the same consideration is disingenuous. The idea, I wouldn't even share some of my own. This is why I don't even share some of the real personal anecdotes that would explode some of the myths that are being said about me in the chat, because first of all, I don't want to be that autobiographical, and it's your goddamn business. But it's also that I'm also trying to step out of the anecdote to say that, and this is sort of my point with you, Diallo, that it's not reducing everything to levels of either anecdotal simplicity to anecdotal simplicity does a disservice to the reality. So I just wish you would laser beam focus that accurate argument and apply it when appropriate, and acknowledge that there are certain experiences people are having that challenge the ease that you bring to your conclusions. That's all. I guess I'll stop there. I've gone way out of pocket. I don't even like getting
Can I
like
ask
this
you
on
a
here, but
couple of questions
please
to
ask as
help me
many as you
gain
want.
clarity?
As many as you want.
What are the racial the primary racial groups of Latin America?
I mean, there's the mestizo, there's the Afro. I guess we could leave it there if we want to stay broad enough for the dominant categories. What are you trying to get at?
What I'm getting at is this concept of brown, because I hear black and brown, black and brown. I listen to Dead Prez albums, and they talking about the plight of black people, and they scream black and brown, black and brown. And I have an issue with terms Latino, Hispanic, and brown. And maybe this is a somewhat of a departure from the core issue of what words they can say and can't say. But I think that the Black community needs to be well educated and well aware that many of these brown people, once they cross that imaginary line between so-called Latin America and North America, that many of those people become white, and they are classified as white in Latin America, and they become brown when here. A lot of people, where we put people under this broad umbrella of brown or Latin or Hispanic, but once they cross that imaginary border, they become black, they become native, they become white, and the same hierarchies that are imposed here are reinforced and imposed even more aggressively in Latin America. I think this goes to Black people exerting ourselves and giving solidarity to people who, number 1, aren't worthy of it, and number 2, don't even want it. I mean, just last Friday, we had a Black woman come here and tell us about Dominicans and their treatment and positions on Haiti and Haitians. And those same people that were part of a Haitian lynch mob in the Dominican Republic can come here and say nigga and have full Black love and solidarity and think there's some type of Black and brown bondage. I think we as a people, beyond the N word, in terms of expenditures of our resources and identifying allies and developing strategies for our protection and our ultimate liberation, need to truly revisit this. Because we every allyship we entered into. And this is nothing new. When you go back to when Irish and Jews were the slum dwellers, and black people thought we had some type of solidarity with these off-white or pre-white, proto-white groups, when they were the slum dwellers, when they were the outsiders, when they were the foreigners with the bad accents. So I think this goes to a much deeper thing of what I call, or what it's not like I came up with it, but black people, we are xenophilic nature. Dr. John Henry Clark said, when you look at the best thing about somebody, you look on the flip side of that, you'll see the worst thing about a people. And one of the things he talked about is our xenophilia. And xenophilia is the ability to love strangers, to see ourselves in strangers, or see ourselves in people who are not us, to project ourselves onto people who are not us. And I think this N word is just a visceral example of how we do this across the board. So I just really, I just want you to know I do hear you. I think we agree ultimately on this. I think our only part of departure is where you say that you didn't say it verbatim, but the way you lay things out to help me understand it, it seems to suggest that you think that it is possible for someone to be so deeply steeped in a community or two different cultures that are often hostile and have divergent interests, can be so merged together, black and brown, that certain things that become allowed that shouldn't be allowed, and the people who are doing the things that shouldn't be allowed are not necessarily doing it from a point of harm or hostility. I don't agree with that, and I don't agree with the harm that it is harmful for a black person to step and say to confront anybody under any terms anywhere. If you can say the word anywhere, you can say the word. That's the
But I'm
place I
talking
can
about,
challenge
just
the
to be
word.
clear, the harm I'm talking about is the harm to the social relationships and to the
I
setting.
understand that. That's
So,
what I'm talking
so,
about too.
so, and I'm acknowledging, but you're wrong in that. The point that you're, the point may be right to make, but it would explode the social fabric. And I'm not saying, and I'm not judging the rightness or wrongness of it. I'm only acknowledging my own unwillingness or inability to do that. And that I'm that part I'm almost partially willing to be criticized for. I'm just opening it up. I'm just being honest about it. But I am not, and I have never said anything that suggests that I am okay with what's happening. I'm only trying to understand and recognize that something is happening. And I don't think that you and many in the chat have been willing to acknowledge that and looked at it honestly. And I don't think you have an accurate and honest assessment of what's happening in some of these communities, in these certain settings, as it's happening now. So your point in general may be correct, but it's not being appropriately applied, and I don't think you're appropriately assessing what's going
I
on.
I have to tell you, I've been in that position, and I'm not some black boot stomper. Or if it's right, if I'm right, I say what I want to say. I fully understand. As an atheist, you don't know how many times
Let's
I've
see.
stood around
Can
my
y'all hear
grandmother.
me?
Hold on. You don't know how many times I've stood
No.
around my grandmother's dining room table to say, "Bless the food," and all this other things that happen from when it's time for the Super Bowl. I don't knock over the TV stands and tell them about, bread and circuses. I fully understand, biting your tongue and holding back your views to preserve relationships. I fully understand that. And I do have non-black people who have married into and procreated with my family members that I have to sit across from. I'm not
Or not?
suggesting that anyone should, you know, blow up family ties. But what I do have to say is there's a certain line. There's a certain line, and I don't fault, and I encourage every black person to establish and hold that line. It's certain shit, like Most Def said, it's certain shit you just don't do. I'm from Brooklyn. There's certain shit you just don't do. And I think this is one line that and again, I would I
Jesus
would
Christ!
I
But
would
Brooklyn is one of the main places where you would hear this contradiction that I'm
exactly.
talking about.
And
So
Brooklyn is
so people
where
definitely
and
do it in
Brooklyn is where
Brooklyn.
I
What are you
fought it.
talking about?
I agree.
And you
I'm
was in
saying
Brooklyn handling it, right? Come on,
yes,
Diallo. You're
every
not being
time.
fair right
Yes.
now, bro, man.
I'm
That's not
I'm
true.
being honest, dead
It's
ass.
not true.
Dead ass, son.
Okay,
Word
I
is
just don't
bond.
believe it. I just
I
don't
was in
believe it.
Brooklyn.
And I don't
Okay.
believe it in the context that I'm
And you
talking
know
about.
what?
I just simply
You know
don't
what the
believe it.
ultimate outcome was? You
Yeah.
know what the ultimate outcome was?
Mm.
When the black people would confront me and be like, yo, son, you don't know. You ain't from here. You don't know how it goes. The person of Latin or Hispanic descent would come to me and apologize. While the
Wayne, I
black
never said
people,
that. See, Wayne, you're not
I'm
listening.
telling
I
you,
never said you
I've
can't.
done
I
it.
never said you, Wayne, I never said you can't. I don't have this discussions with my family. In fact, I said quite the opposite. You're not listening. What I said,
But
in
as
certain
I,
settings,
but
you can't bring stuff up. I said there's certain family members I don't talk about it with, but I said specifically, my daughters and I talk about it. Our household talks about it. We have vigorous conversations about this. But there are certain settings and certain family members where I'm not going to be able to have this conversation, have it go well. And I know for a fact that some of you have to know what I'm talking. There's zero chance that. Well, anyway, it doesn't. I I'm not going to be more anecdotal because I just can't. I can't be more anecdotal than I'm being, because it would be just overly share. It would be oversharing. But the point is, well, I think I made.
I just gotta say,
Coco wants to
when I,
jump in, so
it
I'm
just,
happy
I
to have her
gotta
join
say,
this one.
since I'm being called a liar,
I
I've
am saying that.
encountered
Yeah, I am
this
saying in this case you're not
from
telling the truth.
Dominicans and Puerto Ricans mainly, because Mexicans don't seem to, at least the ones I encountered in New York, didn't seem to do. But Dominicans, and I worked at Wyckoff Hospital in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and I
But I'm
got
not
called
talking
out.
about
Allow me,
jobs. But
allow me to
Diallo, I'm
finish
talking
this.
about. But you're not
I'm
hearing it.
saying,
But you're
I'm
changing the
talking about where
context.
I've been called a liar in the chat
No, no,
and being
no.
called a
But
liar by you.
no. But I'm saying no, no. But
That's what I'm speaking to right
but
now,
I'm
and I
talking
just
about
want to
it.
speak to that. When
But I'm
I
talking
was
about a
in
certain
Bushwick,
context.
when
So I'm not
no,
calling you a liar for that.
I'm
I'm saying
saying,
you said wait.
I'm saying
Diallo, I
that
said you were lying about when you said you were in my context. You're now talking about being on the job. I'm not talking about that. That's a
oh yes,
very
I
different
have been on the
setting.
job. I
But no,
have
but
been
that's a
on the
very
job.
different setting, Diallo. That's what I'm trying to
I'm
say. You're
telling you,
not.
and I've been
Go
in
ahead. I'm sorry.
I've been in social circles. I've
It's
been in
not
pickup
social circles
basketball
either. We're not
games.
talking about
I've
social
been in the
circles.
Cypher in Washington
I'm not
Square
talking
Park.
about that either.
I've been in all those settings. And if it's
Okay.
family, they already know. I've already trained my
It's
relatives. But
again, so you're acknowledging you haven't had to do it in the setting that I'm talking about. So again, you're acknowledging that the
whatever
context I'm
setting,
describing
I'm
is different
talking
from
about
what you're. I
myself.
appreciate that. Go
I'm not
ahead.
trying to speak to
Go
your
ahead.
experience. I'm
Good.
saying
Good.
that the whole time I was in New York, first of all, I was very surprised to find this. It was new to me. I had been going back and forth to New York since '91, and that was my first experience having a non-black person who wasn't a police officer call me the N-word. And I confront it, I challenge it at every turn. And what my experience generally was is that the black people would get hostile and try to correct me and get me to accept this. But the Puerto Rican, mostly Puerto Rican and Dominicans would step to me and be like, yo, I'm sorry. I see where you're coming from. And they were generally apologetic. So it's not even though I was willing to put my life on the line because there was very rarely any type of hostility. It was often when I would articulate my position and say that shit don't fly with me, it would be an apology coming from the Dominican and the Puerto Rican person, whereas the black people felt offended that I would challenge him. That's been my normal experience. So it's not even saying that I did it because I'm so brave or I'm willing to confront any challenges or put my life on the line because my experience has always been played out that way. An uproar from the menticidal black people and an apology from the offender.
Okay, I just want to. I'm going to bring Coco up real quick.
Nobody's gonna respect you more than you respect yourself.
Right, but just as long as we're clear that the context is different. But okay,
I'm
go
just
ahead,
saying, y'all
Coco.
trying to call me a liar. Then bring
Because
your
well, you
non-black
read
friends
you
around me and
redefined.
have them use the
No.
N-word.
Oh, I wouldn't bring you to the setting I'm talking about because if you actually did what you said you would do that I don't believe you would do, then I would feel guilty and I would feel responsible and I wouldn't do that to you. So
And I would
that's
hold
why.
you responsible.
Yeah, and
Don't set
so I wouldn't do
traps.
that to you because but I'm so tempted because I know you well at this point you probably would just make but I refuse to believe that you would engage this way in the settings that I'm talking about. I just don't
What, by
believe it.
simply telling a non-black person not to refer to me as the N-word?
They're not referring to you as
How
the
are
N
you
word. But see, that's again the difference. See, again, they're not
for
calling. See, that's what I'm
using
saying.
the N-word around me?
You damn right. I don't believe you. I don't believe it.
Oh,
I don't
shit.
believe it. 1 second. Not
I
where
don't
I'm
know.
talking
I've
about.
been
But go
that.
ahead,
I don't
Coco.
know
Go
where
ahead,
you
Coco.
be at.
Welcome to the show.
And I'm glad that
I
I'm not
told
in
you where
those
I'm at.
spaces.
I told you where I'm at. Go ahead, Coco.
Peace,
Man, that's
everyone.
wild.
Free the land. Free the land. See, that obviously should be the goal is to free the land, and these nuances of how we do so I think are important. But Diallo, let me ask you a question. What determines who's black and African in the United States? Like what is the line and the determinant? Because I keep hearing Puerto Ricans, I keep hearing Dominicans, knowing that there are African people within within the diaspora that are dispersed in various places or come from various places, who were raised here, right, in the United States, have black parents, have black family, right? And, you know, phenotypically might not look exactly how you think black is. Like what determines someone as black and non-black? Where do we draw the line? That's because I feel like I'm not getting that in your argument. I'm not understanding who we're determining as non-black and black.
Well, first, I'd like to refer back to earlier in the conversation where I asked Jared about the racial breakdown of so-called Latin America. I also said that the words Latin, Hispanic, and even Latino, Hispanic, and even brown make no sense because you have the full gambit of race in Latin America and also the racial hierarchies that exist here in the United States in terms of whites on top, everybody else except blacks in the middle and blacks on the bottom. So I understand, fully understand. And that's why I don't like casting a wide net over anybody coming from that hemisphere because they are as diverse as we are here, and the distinctions are as well acknowledged there as they are here. So no, there's no people coming from Latin America are black, African, Asian, and every other race. So Latino is not a race, Hispanic is not a race. So the way I determine if someone is black is simply by looking at them because there's no way for
Oof.
me to know beyond that. So if is a chance encounter just on the streets, on the surface, there is a black phenotype, there is a black phenotype. I have to go off of that. But if I have to be more technical and formal in my assessment, then of course I have to go through beyond phenotype and go through ancestry, lineage, and nation of origin. But if I'm just walking down the street and I hear a huddle of kids and someone says the N word, I simply look over at them and I look at their phenotype and make the conclusion based on that. And if I am wrong, then I would correct myself and make that apology.
So
But I
you rather create more enemies. You
wow.
rather create more enemies, right?
As if we
Than
created our
than
enemies.
no. I'm not saying that. I'm just
I don't
saying
know
that, if you
the black
if you
people that black
coming,
people
so
created.
are biracial people not black? Is my question to you.
It depends on what the biraciality is.
Depending on what?
On who the one of the parents is.
What you
If
mean?
you're Mongolian and Persian, no, you're not
No,
black.
I
What
said okay. So
biracial people?
it
There's
by
biracial.
people of African descent who are also mixed, right?
They're
Whatever they're
black.
mixed
Yeah,
with, whatever they're mixed
yes.
with, doesn't matter. If they are of African, I'm talking about people of African descent here. I'm not even talking about people who are mixed with a bunch of different things. I'm talking about
Oh,
people of African descent who have black family,
then they
right?
black.
Black
Then they
family,
black.
no matter, but where they come from.
They black.
So the Dominican Republic,
Yes.
they're
Dominican
black.
Republic, not all Dominicans are black, not all
Wait.
Dominicans are
I'm not
white, not all Dominicans are
but not
native.
all people in the United States are black. So we're not
And
talking
yes,
about that. That's not
no,
important right now.
Dominican
The
is not
question is,
synonymous with black.
the question is, the question is, people of African descent. This is exactly what I'm saying. People of African descent, right? From the Dominican Republic, from people of African descent from Puerto Rico, people of African descent, no matter what continent they're on. My question to you, is if they are mixed, are they black?
Yes.
They are. Why is it so then if you know that these people, right, there's nuance that I think Jared is probably trying to address here. There's nuance, right, where there are a lot of people of African descent who have family who are black, legitimately black, but may not look like they black. And then you go and say, what do you say to that person? What do you say to that person? What are people supposed to say to people saying that I don't think you black? They're supposed to be questioned.
I don't go around telling people I don't think they black. Why would I do that?
But if you said phenotype, you're talking about phenotype.
So you're ignoring
phenotype,
you're ignoring the trigger.
Not
here.
everybody.
You're
not everybody with black parents looks the same.
I agree with all of that, but why are you leaving out the main trigger here?
What's the main? I'm talking about people of African descent.
Using I don't care. The N-word.
But you keep lumping people who are Dominican.
I don't walk around
you keep lumping people
as I go around about my day.
But you're lumping people together as if you don't have biracial people of Latin American. You acting like Latin American people are not biracial.
No, I didn't say that. When did I ever say that? What I said was, Black people, we play ourselves when we think Latino, Hispanic, brown is something we can automatically hold solidarity with, because south of the border, racism, discrimination, lynching, dehumanization, mockery of the African phenotype exists south of the border. And there are many people who are classified and conduct themselves as white south of the border. And when they come to the Northern Hemisphere, they all of a sudden become brown, and we think we got to hold solidarity with them. So my first question to anyone that wants to hold solidarity with Black people is, and if you're not Black or African descent, whether you're Palestinian or whether you are anywhere else, is how do you deal with the racism and racial discrimination within your own group? That's my first question to anybody that's not Black that wants to hold solidarity with me. I acknowledge that just like the United States, there is a rainbow. There are Asians. I met more Indians from Guyana than India. Most of the Indians I know are from Guyana, from South America than India. I know the distinctions, and I know the hierarchy, and I know the injustices, and I know the racism south of the border that we fail to acknowledge when we start talking this Black and brown solidarity shit. But I don't go around trying to dictate people's Blackness. I don't try to deny anybody Blackness or to bestow Blackness upon anyone. And I acknowledge that Africans appear everywhere. And most of us, like Dr. John Henry Clark says, the only difference between Black people here and Black people Latin America was a boat stop. There are our people, they are our brother, and they are us.
And I agree with you when there ain't no Latin American people who are gonna say the N-word, and I'm gonna be like, okay, that's cool. I'm gonna check them too. Okay, I feel you on that, and I've seen it. Right?
I'm sorry. One moment. Sorry.
What's up, Jared?
Oh, my bad. I moved.
Jared left.
I removed the wrong. So what's up, Coco? Thank you for joining us.
What's going on? I just feel like there's a lot of nuance, like coming from New York, I feel like there is that nuance that exists, right? And so there are a lot of people that you may not assume or understand that I've had questions, right? I've known people who are light, like so light that you were like, they look like Latino, right? And you don't really know that they actually have Black parents or Black family. And so like, I understand that there's this nuance, right? And so
Latino is not a race.
Because you're in these
Latino
environments.
Can be any color.
Hold on, Diallo. Let her finish.
I know that. Hello.
You said they so light they look Latino?
They light skin, but they physically, you just don't know.
How do you look Latino?
They're brown. How about they brown? You talk about brown. How about brown? Okay, brown.
Come on, Diallo. Come on, Diallo. Come on, Diallo. Don't do that, man. You're the one who's talking about brown people. You're the one who's saying that they white in Latin America and they come here looking brown. You said that they look brown when they come. They brown when they come here.
I said okay. So what's brown?
I didn't say they look. You talk about phenotype.
That was my question.
You
That
talking
was
about
my question.
phenotype.
I said
You
they
talked
come
about
here. I
phenotype.
said they're south of the border, they're white. And when they cross this into the northern hemisphere, they become magically brown. I
But there
said,
are
what does
some
brown
people
mean? It don't
who
mean
might all
nothing.
look the same. They might all look the same, but they might have Black family and parents. And
But
so I
Diallo,
think that
sorry.
nuance, I think that we can't necessarily understand or determine. We can't necessarily determine, right? I can't sit here and look at somebody and say, oh, you're Black. I can't look at somebody and say, oh, I can't necessarily, not all the time. When it comes down to people who are mixed, when it comes down to people who are mixed, when
It's
people
very
are
funny to me
mixed
because,
of
like Dr.
African
John Henry
descent.
Clark said, racists have no problem figuring out who's Black. Bobby E. Wright said, the racists have no problem figuring out who's Black, but we Black people like, I don't know who Black is. But everybody that wants to exploit us, lynch us, discriminate against us, they're very easy for them to figure out who Black is. But then here we have, as Black people, this discussion. I can't just look at somebody and tell they Black. I wish that was the case. When we go in for bank loans, when we go in for business loans or for housing loans, when we try to move into certain neighborhoods or apply to
But
certain
Diallo,
schools and
but that's an
institutions.
important distinction that you're not. But you don't. But of course,
Yes, David.
Yeah.
but of course, white
He looks
supremacists.
Black.
But of course, white supremacists and colonists. Peace. How are you?
That
Of
is
course,
my wife.
I'm here to try to help. Hi, Coco. Hi, G.
How are you?
Of course, white supremacists are going to easily identify their targets for oppression. That's
And
not
social liberationist.
okay, but that's not. But again, that's not the context. But do you understand that? All right, I don't understand why you're resistant to. There's the argument you're correctly making, and then there is the nuanced experiences in specific settings that analysis doesn't reach. So the pockets that I'm talking about, that I'm experiencing, these are not people who are at least they're not well versed in these histories. They're not in regular exchange with these contexts and the differences in their identity there versus here. What the specific context I was thinking of when I initially brought this up, and not realizing that I was going to be dragged out of my own context into an argument that I'm not making, was simply that in certain segments of these communities, the way people are being raised and encouraged to be raised, including within Black communities, is a disturbed version, is a disturbed reality that creates a kind of unity that is it's maybe based on a disturbed, it's based in disturbedness. But if you try to approach it from this analysis of the Clarkian analysis, or the analysis that either all three of us or four of us might hold, it's gonna be misunderstood, and it's gonna lose its value, because the initial response is gonna be, I know I'm Latino. I know I'm not Black, but I also have Black friends and family and children and in my community. And they, in the same way I almost hesitate to ask this, I don't know that you would argue in every setting when you hear Black people using the N-word with each other, that you would look to intervene in each one of those instances to try to have the anti-menticide conversation. And that's where I hear Coco's intervention playing a valuable role here, because in these settings, the distinctions between Black and brown, Latino, Hispanic, African diaspora, Black American are so in their minds blurred and in their experiences blurred that drawing out these
I understand, but
you said you
so,
it's
and I'm not saying that they're right. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that in trying to intervene and make the points that you're rightly bringing, I would not be able in these settings to have a successful intervention without it becoming something worse. Right. And that's where I'm acknowledging now that specific setting and my specific nuanced context is not being considered here. It's not being addressed by you or many in the chat, and that's why I'm saying that the accuracy in your argument is being misapplied, and we're losing. Go ahead.
I was just wondering what the
I
actual,
think I
don't know if you guys can hear me. I was just wondering what the actual point of contention is here, because I was listening downstairs and I don't really think that anyone here is clear on what the actual point of contention is, number one.
Yes.
Yeah. So then, and then two, if I did hear correctly, it seems that, and I didn't want to misrepresent, but are you saying, Jared, that, or Dr. Ball, are you saying that if someone,
Please call me Jared.
Jared, are you
I
saying
can't
that
be
if
arguing with your
someone,
man like this and you call me
I know,
doctor. No, I'm
I
just playing.
think I'm on team EYL. If someone does not phenotypically present Black, but that's not really even as much the point.
You got to get close.
That's not even as much as the point. If someone doesn't identify as Black, if you ask someone what their race is or their ethnicity, because I think self-identification is really our best tool, I would imagine. And so if someone says that I am Latino, and you say, "Are you Black?" No, I'm not Black, Latino. And then they're freely using the nigger. I mean, why evoke a word and not say it out loud? So if they're freely saying nigger this, nigger, then is that not then a point where we should intervene and say, as Black people who identify as Black, right? Because that's going to be the best tool that I can see. What do you say you are? And so if someone says that they're Black, and then they're faced with someone who says that they're Latino and not Black, is saying nigger, 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 should that Black person then say, "No, I'm sorry, you don't get to do that"? Or should they perhaps, for the sake of relations, leave it be because they don't want to ostracize or make that Latino person feel disconnected from them culturally? Because that's the point of contention, I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume.
So you're very close to being right. There's a couple adjustments I would want to make for clarity. One, I want, and I understand, but I hesitate to do this, but I have to. From their perspective, they would want to be clear that it's the A and not the hard ER. It's being said in a brotherly, comradely sense in exchanges with people who are using it to them as well. So it's in this sense, it's not being you're a nigger and it's a hard, it's not like that. It's like nigga, come on, nigga, my man, my nigga.
Right,
that's the thing. So that's the setting, brotherly. Right?
Yeah.
Now, what I'm acknowledging is I do not like it. I do not agree with it. I do. And in certain settings, do intervene, have intervened, will intervene. What I'm acknowledging is that in the specific settings, most specifically when I'm talking about my in-laws, family, and very deep overlapping, because again, we're not just talking about Latinos who are engaged in socially. We're talking about blood ties, children, marriages, overlap. In that setting, I'm thinking of the party I was just at. I'm not going to intervene. I'm not going to step into the middle of that and say this is inappropriate. This is menticide. This is hurting the community. This is because the response, which is in past experience, will be you're taking it out of context, Jared. You don't know what you're talking about. This is how we get down. Get out of here. And then worse, you're intervening in a family situation that you aren't qualified to be in because you're an in-law or and so on and so forth. So that was the only point I'm trying to make. I'm not disagreeing.
Final clarifying question for me. One more clarifying question. So I guess that makes me think about you as an educator and me as an educator, and how oftentimes when there are difficult settings like that, if it is incorrect or if you don't like it, at what juncture is it appropriate to then just say with care and maybe even a little condemnation for those who are offending, to say, but it doesn't have to be a big blow up, but it could be an opportunity to educate. I've taken those opportunities in classrooms, and I wonder if you do too.
Of course, in classrooms, and as I've said repeatedly all morning, in private, in different social settings with my family, with my friends, we have extensive routine conversations about this, and obviously in the classroom. But I'm talking what I was trying to draw was a specific setting, and then extend from that a specific context in which these exchanges are happening that I don't think is being properly acknowledged here.
So the point of contention isn't whether or not it's acceptable. You find it unacceptable, and you find it inappropriate.
Correct.
But it seems the point of contention is in which spaces is it appropriate to call it out. So you're
and where
saying
I feel most effective and comfortable doing it. And where I've
Not
experienced in
that
the
the
past
spaces,
it not being effective and
and
it
not
being more.
that the spaces where you choose not to call it out doesn't mean that it shouldn't be called out or that it couldn't be helpful to call it out, but perhaps you are not the best person in that space to do so.
Correct too. Fair enough with that
And
too.
that's
I've acknowledged that too. That's exactly my point.
And
And
it
that's
seems
why I've
like
been
that's
trying to
the only
say,
point of contention.
and that's why I've been trying to say where I find it frustrating, particularly with these anonymous folks in the chat, where you show any tendency to self-deprecation or failure, and folks want to run too far with their mouths, and I found that very frustrating this morning.
They'll do that all the time.
But and then in terms of the exchange with Diallo, I found it very frustrating that he is not willing to. I'm not hearing him hear this distinction I'm trying to draw. So
I think there were some misconceptions on both sides. I was downstairs listening and losing my mind. There were a few. And I think that sometimes when you're engaged in the heated argument, it's hard to hear the other person's point of view. I'm grateful that Coco stepped in. I'm grateful that Geeche's back.
My side.
Yay, Geech. Okay, I take.
But I would still love to hear what I misunderstood and what I misrepresented in Diallo's argument. Because I don't think I've misunderstood or misrepresented anything.
More abundantly, I'm not here to drag you all back down to the depth, and I'm going to excuse myself. I just think that you're both making really, really great points. I can hear both sides of the coin. I just did not think that I did bring my book. I was going to share. I teach a class on difference, so I was going to share the definition of race because I just
hold up the book again.
It's the meaning of difference. And they have definitions for all of the terms. I'm like, can we get some operational definitions? But this is not a class. But I think anyway, I just wanted to, now Coco and Geechee are here, so we're all safe. I just wanted to just bring that point of contention to the fore, because I did not think that I thought that you both were kept missing one another. And it seems now that I can leave here and safely know that you both understand that the only point of contention is that you're saying that it's absolutely unacceptable. They should not be doing it. In certain cases, I'm more effective than others. Seen. If I understood properly.
You understood. The only thing I think you've misunderstood is that I've never not been clear on that. Diallo's the only one who has not been clear on that. So I don't agree that we've both equally misunderstood each other. I think there's only been there's been one gross misunderstanding. I've fully understood. I've not been understood. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Diallo has a wonderful wife. I say that.
He does.
I met her at the conference, and he has a wonderful wife. And
I agree.